I still remember the exact moment I realized I'd married a man who didn't love me. It was the night he looked at me like he finally did. By then it was already too late. Before I begin, if you like emotional human stories that stay with you, hit subscribe so you never miss another one, and comment down from which city you're watching this video. My name is Nora Dietrich. I'm 31 years old, and until 6 months ago, I ran a small estate liquidation business in Portland, Oregon. The kind of work where you walk through dead people's houses and decide what's worth keeping. I'd gotten good at assessing value in objects anyway. In people, I was apparently blind. I married Julian Hargrave on a Tuesday in March, in front of a notary public and his attorney. No flowers, no music. Just paperwork and a dinner reservation neither of us kept because he had a conference call with Singapore that ran late. I wore a cream-coloured dress I'd bought on sale. He wore the same suit he'd worn to our first meeting, which hadn't been a date, it had been a business consultation. Julian needed a wife, I needed money. We were both honest about it, which I thought meant we were being smart. I'd like to say I had no illusions, but that would be a lie. Everyone has illusions. Mine was just quieter than most. The first time I saw Julian, he was standing in the reception area of my office, which is generous. It was really just a converted garage space I rented in southeast Portland, looking completely out of place among the vintage furniture and estate sale signs. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, and he was frowning at his phone like it had personally offended him. Hey, him! Mr. Hargrave, I said, wiping sawdust off my hands. I'd been disassembling a mahogany dresser in the back. He looked up, dark eyes, sharp jaw, the kind of face that photographs well but doesn't necessarily smile much, in person. Miss Dietrich, thank you for making time. Of course, come on back. My office was a disaster, paperwork everywhere, half-catalogued estates stacked in boxes, a coffee maker that hadn't been cleaned in a week. Julian sat in the chair across from my desk like he was trying not to touch anything. So, I said, settling into my own chair, you mentioned on the phone this was about a family estate. Not exactly. He folded his hands on the table. I need someone I can trust. Someone outside my usual circles. Your name came up through a mutual acquaintance. Who? Rebecca Lim. She said you handled her mother's estate last year, said you were discreet. I remembered Rebecca. Her mother had died suddenly, and the estate had been complicated. A second family no one knew about. Forged documents. A whole mess. I'd helped untangle it quietly. Rebecca's a good person. How is she? She's well. She also said you were in a difficult financial situation. I stiffened. I don't know what that has to do with... Miss Dietrich, I'm going to be blunt, because I don't have time to dance around this. I need a wife for legal and business purposes. The arrangement would last 2 years minimum. You would be compensated generously, and at the end of the term, you'd walk away with enough money to solve whatever problems you're currently facing. In return, I need someone who can be trusted to maintain discretion and fulfill basic social obligations. I stared at him. You're joking. I'm not. This is insane. It's practical. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the desk. My grandfather's will stipulates that I must be married to inherit his share of the company. He died 8 months ago. The board is pressuring me to fulfill the condition or step aside. I don't intend to step aside. So marry someone you actually... There is no one, he said, and something in his tone made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. I don't have time for a relationship, and I don't want one. What I need is a legal solution to a legal problem. You need money. Rebecca mentioned medical debt from your mother's illness. This solves both our problems. I should have thrown him out. I should have laughed in his face. Instead, I opened the folder. The number at the bottom made my throat tighten. It was more than enough to clear my mother's remaining bills, pay off the business loan I'd taken out last year, and actually have something left over. Maybe even enough to stop waking up at 3 in the morning, calculating which creditor to pay first. Why me? I asked quietly. Because you're not connected to my world. Because Rebecca said you were trustworthy, and because, frankly, you look like someone who understands that sometimes survival requires compromise. It should have insulted me. Instead, it just felt true. I need to think about it. You have 48 hours. After that, I'm moving on to the next candidate. He left his card. I sat in that garage office for an hour after he was gone, holding the folder, feeling like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't see the bottom of. I called my best friend Ivy Chen that night. She came over with Thai food and a bottle of wine, which was her solution to most problems. "Let me get this straight," she said, sitting cross-legged on my apartment floor. "A millionaire walked into your office and proposed a business marriage, essentially. And you're actually considering it. I don't know, maybe. Ivy, the money is not worth marrying a stranger. People marry strangers all the time. At least this way we're both clear about what we're getting into." Ivy gave me a look that said she thought I was losing my mind. Possibly she was right. "Nora, babe, this is not a rom-com. This is your actual life." "I know that. Do you? Because you're talking about this like it's a business deal and marriage is not." "That's exactly what it is for him. That's what he's offering." "And what do you get, besides money? 2 years playing house with some corporate robot who can't be bothered to find a real relationship." I didn't answer because I didn't know how to explain it, how tired I was, how the debt felt like drowning in slow motion, how my mother's last year had drained everything financially, emotionally, all of it, and I was still trying to surface. Ivy sighed. "I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying be careful. Guys like that, they're used to getting what they want. They don't see people like us as real." He was honest, at least. Honesty without kindness is just cruelty with better PR. She wasn't wrong, but she also wasn't the one fielding calls from collection agencies. I said yes. The next 3 weeks were a blur of legal paperwork, medical examinations, background checks, and a prenuptial agreement so thick I had to hire a lawyer just to read it. Julian's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Caroline Voss, walked me through every clause. "You understand this is a fixed-term contract," Caroline said during our second meeting. 2 years. Renewable if both parties agree. You'll maintain residence at Mr. Hargrave's primary home in Portland Heights. You'll attend necessary social and business functions. In return, you'll receive a monthly stipend, full health insurance, and the lump sum at the contract's conclusion. What if one of us wants out early? There are penalty clauses. It's expensive. For both sides. And if he falls in love with someone else?" Caroline's expression didn't change. "That would constitute a breach of contract. The agreement requires exclusivity for the duration of the term." It felt surreal, like negotiating a job offer, except the job was being someone's wife. I met Julian twice more before the wedding. Once for dinner at a quiet restaurant where he explained what his family was like, wealthy old Portland money, complicated dynamics I'd need to navigate. His parents were dead. He had a younger sister, Margot, who he described as difficult. The company, Hargrave Industries, did something involving tech manufacturing and supply chain logistics that he explained and I immediately forgot. The second time, he took me to the house. It was in Portland Heights, perched on a hillside with a view of the city and Mount Hood in the distance. Modern architecture, all glass and clean lines, the kind of place you see in magazines and assume no one actually lives in. Inside, it was pristine, expensive furniture, art I didn't recognize, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used. "You can redecorate if you want," Julian said, watching me take it in. "Within reason. Do you actually live here, or is this just for show?" "I travel a lot for work. When I'm here, I mostly stay in the study." "Sounds lonely." He looked at me, something unreadable in his expression. "It's efficient." We stood there in that beautiful empty house, and I wondered what I was walking into. The wedding was exactly as romantic as you'd expect. Julian's attorney served as witness. The notary asked the required questions. We signed papers. I'd brought Ivy, who held my hand and looked like she was attending a funeral. Afterward, Julian said, "I have that call with Singapore. I'll have my driver take you to the house. Your things have already been moved." Wait, when? This morning. I sent a service. Everything should be in the primary guest room. We'll discuss living arrangements properly this weekend. And then he left. Ivy drove me to Portland Heights, instead of Julian's driver. When we pulled up to the house, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "It's not too late," she said. "We can turn around right now. You can stay with me. We'll figure something else out." I signed a contract, Ivy. Contracts can be broken. Not without penalties I can't afford. She hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. "Call me. Every day. I mean it." I promised I would. The house felt even emptier at night. My things were there, unpacked neatly in a room that was twice the size of my old apartment. I sat on the edge of the bed, a bed that probably cost more than everything I'd owned combined, and tried to figure out what I'd just done. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. "I'll be home late. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. We'll talk in the morning." I didn't respond. I ordered pizza, ate it sitting on the floor of that massive house, and wondered if this was what making a deal with the devil felt like. The first month was strange in ways I hadn't anticipated. Julian was polite, distant, but not unkind. He worked constantly up before dawn, home late if he came home at all. Some nights I'd hear him come in around 2 or 3 in the morning, moving quietly through the house like a ghost. We had separate bedrooms, which had been part of the agreement. On weekday mornings, we'd occasionally cross paths in the kitchen. He'd make coffee, I'd make tea, and we'd exist in the same space without really acknowledging each other. "Do you need anything?" he asked one morning, not looking up from his phone. "No, I'm fine." "Caroline mentioned you'd be attending the company gala next month. We'll need to coordinate schedules. You'll need something appropriate to wear." "I can handle my own clothes." "I'm sure you can, but these events have expectations. I'll have a stylist contact you." It should have bothered me more, probably, the casual way he managed everything, including me. But I'd agreed to this. I'd known what it was. What I hadn't anticipated was how isolated I'd feel. Portland Heights was beautiful, but it wasn't my neighborhood. I didn't know anyone. My work had been put on hold. Part of the agreement was that I'd be available for the social obligations that came with being Julian's wife, which meant a lot of empty days in a house that didn't feel like mine. I started taking long walks, down to Washington Park through the Rose Garden, anywhere that felt less suffocating than that glass house on the hill. It was during one of these walks that I met Diane Sutter. She was in her early 60s, wearing gardening gloves and kneeling in the front yard of a house 3 blocks from Julian's. She looked up as I passed and smiled. "You're new to the neighborhood," she said. It wasn't a question. "Sort of. I'm staying nearby." Staying. That's an interesting word choice. She stood, brushing dirt off her knees. "I'm Diane. I've lived here 40 years, which makes me either a fixture or a nuisance, depending on who you ask." I liked her immediately. "Nora?" "Well, Nora, if you're going to walk past my house every day looking like you're trying to escape something, you might as well stop for tea occasionally. I make excellent tea and terrible conversation, which I find is a good balance." I laughed, surprising myself. "I might take you up on that." "Please do. I'm starved for company that isn't my husband's golf buddies." Over the next few weeks, I did stop. Diane's house was everything Julian's wasn't: cluttered, warm, lived in. She asked questions but didn't pry. She talked about her kids, her garden, the neighborhood gossip. It was normal in a way I'd forgotten existed. It was Diane who first mentioned Margot. "Julian Hargrave's sister," she said one afternoon over tea. "She used to come by when she was younger. Troubled girl. Talented, though she painted. Beautifully, actually. Haven't seen her in years." Julian mentioned he had a sister. Did he mention they don't speak? No. Diane made a non-committal sound. Old family wounds. Tends to happen in families like that. Too much money, too many expectations, not enough room to be human. I thought about that on the walk home. About Julian's empty house, his careful distance, the way he seemed to exist in the world without actually being part of it. The company gala was the first time I understood what I'd really signed up for. The stylist Julian sent was a woman named Simone, who treated me like a project. She brought racks of dresses, boxes of shoes, a makeup artist and hairstylist in tow. I stood there while they circled me, discussing fabrics and silhouettes like I wasn't in the room. The emerald, Simone finally decided. It'll photograph well, and it's appropriate without being too conservative. The dress was beautiful, I'd give her that, but standing in front of the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Julian came to pick me up that evening, rare since he usually had his driver handle everything. He stopped when he saw me, something flickering across his face too quickly to read. Akaha, you look appropriate, he said finally. High praise. I meant... He stopped, started again. You look nice. Thank you for doing this. In the car, he briefed me. Who would be there, who mattered, what to say and what to avoid. I was supposed to be pleasant, supportive, vaguely interested in whatever conversation happened, but not too opinionated. A prop, essentially. And if anyone asks how we met, I said. We met through mutual friends. We kept it quiet because I value privacy. That's all they need to know. The gala was at the Portland Art Museum, and it was exactly as insufferable as I'd imagined. Wealthy people in expensive clothes, making small talk about market trends and vacation homes. I smiled until my face hurt, shook hands with people whose names I forgot immediately, and stood next to Julian while he networked. A few people were kind. Most were curious, eyeing me like they were trying to figure out where I fit in the ecosystem. Julian's business partner, a man named Marcus Roth, was openly skeptical. Julian didn't mention he was seeing anyone, Marcus said, his tone just shy of accusatory. We prefer to keep our personal life private, I replied, using the script Julian had to me. How modern. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. Well, welcome to the family, so to speak. It was exhausting. By 10 o'clock I was ready to leave, but Julian was deep in conversation with a group of investors. I slipped away to the restroom, needing a moment alone. When I came back out, a woman was waiting in the hallway. She was about my age, tall and striking, with dark hair cut sharply at her shoulders. She looked at me with open hostility. So you're the new wife, she said. I'm sorry, do I know you? Not yet. I'm Margot Hargrave, Julian's sister, the one he didn't tell you about. I'm guessing. I'd seen photos in the house. Julian kept exactly 2 family pictures, both in his study, both carefully framed. Margot had been younger in them, softer somehow. The woman in front of me had sharp edges. He mentioned you, I said carefully. I'm sure he did. Let me guess, difficult. Estranged. He's got a whole vocabulary for dismissing family. I don't want to get in the middle of whatever. You're already in the middle. You married him. That makes you complicit. She leaned against the wall, studying me. Let me give you some free advice. Whatever Julian told you about why he needs a wife, it's not the whole truth. It's never the whole truth with him. What's that supposed to mean? It means my brother is very good at presenting a certain image, very good at making things seem simple when they're not. You seem like a nice person, so I'm warning you. Get out while you can. Before I could respond, she walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, heart pounding, trying to process what had just happened. Julian found me a few minutes later. Ready to go? Your sister's here. His expression closed off immediately. I know. She talked to me. What did she say? That I should leave you. He was quiet for a long moment. Margot has her own perspective on things. It's complicated. So explain it. Not here. He glanced around the hallway. Let's go home. In the car, he was silent. I waited, but he didn't offer anything. Finally, I said, "You told me she was difficult. You didn't mention she hates you." "She doesn't hate me. She hates what I represent." "Which is?" "The family legacy, the company, the responsibilities she never wanted." He stared out the window. "Margot is talented. She wanted to paint, to travel, to be an artist. Our grandfather wanted her to join the business. When she refused, he cut her off. She's been volatile since then. And you?" "I did what was expected of me." "At what cost?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw something other than a careful control in his eyes. Exhaustion, maybe. Or something older than that. "We all pay costs, Nora. You of all people should understand that." He was right, I did understand. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. Things shifted after that night, not dramatically, but in small ways that accumulated. Julian started coming home earlier. Not every night, but more often. We'd eat dinner together, sometimes, usually take out. Neither of us were great cooks and talk about surface things. The weather, the news, anything that didn't require vulnerability. I started working again, sorting through a small estate Rebecca had referred to me. Nothing major, but it felt good to have something to do. Julian didn't object, as long as it didn't interfere with the social obligations. There were more events, a charity auction where I bid on art I didn't understand, a corporate dinner where Marcus Roth got drunk and made unpointed comments about sudden marriages until Julian shut him down with a look that could freeze water. A weekend trip to Seattle for a tech conference where I spent 2 days smiling at strangers while Julian gave presentations about supply chain innovation. It was during the Seattle trip that something changed. We were in the hotel room, separate beds, per usual, and Julian was working on his laptop even though it was nearly midnight. I was reading or trying to, but I was distracted by the way he kept rubbing his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. "You should sleep," I said. "I need to finish this." "When's the last time you actually slept through the night?" He didn't answer. I set my book down. "Julian, you're going to burn out." "I don't have time to burn out." "That's not how it works." "I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're exhausted. You've been exhausted since the day I met you." He closed the laptop, looked at me with something I couldn't quite read. "Why do you care?" It was a genuine question, not hostile, just confused, like the concept of someone caring about his well-being was foreign. "Because that's what people do," I said quietly. "They care about each other. We have a business arrangement. We're also living in the same house, eating meals together, sharing a life, even if it's temporary. That makes us something. Friends?" There was a bitter edge to the word. "Maybe, if you'd let it." He stared at me for a long time. Then he opened the laptop again, but he didn't look at it. "My grandfather used to say that weakness was indulged at your own peril. That sentiment was a luxury the successful couldn't afford." "Your grandfather sounds like an asshole." That surprised a laugh out of him. A real one, startled and brief. "He was. Brilliant, but ruthless. He built the company from nothing, and he made sure everyone knew it, including me." "Is that why you're doing this? The marriage, the company, all of it? Because of him?" "Partly, but also because—" He paused. "Because someone has to. The company employs 3,000 people. Their families depend on it. That's not nothing. Neither are you." He didn't respond to that, just closed the laptop, turned off the light, and we lay there in the dark, two strangers sharing space, pretending not to be lonely. It was Diane who first made me think I might be in trouble. Look, I'd started spending more time at her house, helping with her garden, listening to her stories about the neighborhood. She never asked directly about my marriage, but she had a way of seeing things without being told. "You're different than you were a few months ago," she said one afternoon, handing me a trowel. Different how? Softer, or maybe just less guarded? Hard to tell. I don't feel different. She didn't look convinced. How's your husband? Julian. He's Julian. Descriptive. I laughed despite myself. He's busy. Always working, but I don't know. Not what I expected. Better or worse? Just different. More human, maybe. He's got this whole thing where he pretends he doesn't need anyone or anything, but every once in a while you see through it. Diane smiled knowingly. Oh dear. What? You're falling for him. I'm not. Nora, sweetheart. I've been married 42 years. I know what it looks like when someone's starting to care. It's not like that. We have an arrangement. It's temporary. Hearts don't care about arrangements. I wanted to argue, but the words stuck in my throat, because maybe she was right. Maybe I was starting to care in ways I hadn't planned for, the way Julian looked when he was focused on something, the rare moments when he smiled, really smiled, the way he'd started asking me about my day like he actually wanted to know. It was dangerous. I knew it was dangerous, but knowing didn't seem to help. The breaking point came in July. Julian had a major deal closing something about an acquisition that would expand the company into Asian markets. It had been consuming him for weeks, and the night before the final presentation to the board, he was a wreck. I found him in his study at 2 a.m, surrounded by papers, staring at his laptop screen like he could will it into submission. "Come to bed," I said from the doorway. "I can't. I need to." "Julian, you know this material inside out. You've been preparing for months. Going without sleep isn't going to help. If this doesn't go through, it will. You can't know that. No, but I know you're brilliant and thorough, and you've thought of every possible contingency. And I know that you're not going to be any good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion." He looked at me and I saw it, the fear underneath all that control, the weight of expectations, of legacy, of 3,000 employees depending on him to not fail. I walked into the room, closed his laptop gently and held out my hand. "Come on. Nora, trust me just this once." He hesitated. Then he took my hand. I led him to the kitchen, made him tea, and sat with him at the island while he drank it. We didn't talk about work. I told him about the estate I was working on, a woman who'd collected over 300 teacups, each with its own story. He listened, and slowly the tension in his shoulders eased. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For caring, even though you don't have to." "Maybe I want to." He looked at me then, and something shifted in the air between us. A charged moment where I thought he might say something, do something, acknowledge what was building beneath the surface of our careful arrangement. Instead, he stood up. "I should try to sleep. Big day tomorrow." "Right, of course." He paused at the doorway. "Nora, would you come with me tomorrow? To the presentation?" "I thought it was board members only." "It is, but you're my wife. That gives you clearance, and I'd like you there." My heart did something complicated in my chest. "Okay, yes, I'll be there." He nodded, something vulnerable in his expression, and then he was gone. I sat in that kitchen for a long time after, trying to make sense of what was happening, of how a business arrangement had become something else without either of us acknowledging it. The presentation was at the company headquarters downtown. I'd never been there before, a sleek building in the Pearl District, all glass and steel. Julian was nervous, though he hid it well. In the elevator up to the executive floor, I squeezed his hand. "You've got this," I said. "I hope you're right." The boardroom was intimidating, 12 people seated around a massive table, all of them older than Julian, all of them watching him with expressions ranging from skeptical to outright hostile. Marcus Roth was there, sitting near the head of the table, looking smug. I sat in the back, trying to be invisible. Julian's presentation was flawless. He walked them through the acquisition details, the projected growth, the risk mitigation strategies. He answered every question with confidence. He was in his element. And it showed. But then Marcus spoke up. "This is all very impressive, Julian, but I think we need to address the elephant in the room." He glanced at me. "Your sudden marriage. It's raised some questions about your judgment. My personal life has no bearing on this deal." "Doesn't it? You married a woman no one had ever heard of right around the time your grandfather's will became an issue. Some might call that convenient timing." "Some might mind their own business," Julian said coldly. "We're all stakeholders in this company. Your decisions affect us. So forgive me for wondering whether this marriage is legitimate or just another calculated move to maintain control." The room went silent. I felt every eye turn to me. Julian's jaw tightened. "Marcus, if you have concerns about my leadership, file them formally, but leave my wife out of it." "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." "No," I said, surprising myself. "You're being an asshole because you want Julian's position and you're using his personal life to undermine him." Marcus's face went red. "Excuse me." "You heard me. This deal is solid. You know it's solid. But instead of focusing on that, you're making personal attacks because you're threatened. It's transparent and it's pathetic." Julian looked at me shocked. So did everyone else. Marcus stood up. "I don't have to sit here and—" "Actually, you do," said a woman at the head of the table. Margaret Chen, the board chair. She was in her 70s, sharp-eyed and commanding. "Because Mrs. Hargrave is right. This is about business, not Julian's marriage. So sit down, Marcus, and let's vote." The vote was unanimous in favor of the deal. Even Marcus, though he looked like it physically pained him. Afterward, Margaret pulled me aside while Julian was gathering his materials. "That was quite a performance," she said, not unkindly. "I'm sorry if I overstepped." "You didn't. You defended your husband. That takes courage, especially in a room like that." She studied me carefully. "Whatever the circumstances of your marriage, it's clear you care about him. That's more than most of us can say about our spouses after decades together." I didn't know what to say to that. Julian was quiet on the drive home. I couldn't read his expression. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "I shouldn't have—" "No, you were right. Marcus has been gunning for my position for years. Someone needed to call him out." He glanced at me. "Thank you for standing up for me. You would have done the same." Would I? It was a real question, like he genuinely didn't know. That night, Julian knocked on my bedroom door around 11. I was already in bed, reading. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Sure." He sat on the edge of the bed, still in his dress shirt and slacks, looking exhausted, but lighter than he had in weeks. "I wanted to say thank you, properly, for today, for the last few months, actually. You've been more than I expected." "Julian, let me finish. Please." He took a breath. "When I proposed this arrangement, I thought I was being smart, practical, solving a problem efficiently, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being an arrangement, at least for me." My heart was pounding so hard, I thought he must be able to hear it. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've been lying to myself. About what this is. About what I want." He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, there was no careful control in his expression, just raw honesty. "I'm saying I think I'm falling in love with you, Nora. And I don't know what to do about it." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because I'd been feeling the same thing, but I'd convinced myself it was one-sided, that Julian was incapable of that kind of emotion. I started, but I didn't know how to finish. He stood up quickly. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. The contract. Julian, wait." But he was already at the door. "Good night, Nora." And then he was gone, leaving me alone with my racing heart and the sudden, terrifying realization that I was in love with my husband. God, the husband I was contracted to leave in 18 months. The husband who just told me he was falling for me and then walked away before I could tell him I felt the same. I lay awake all night staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do now. The next morning, Julian was gone. A text on my phone. Had to fly to San Francisco for meetings. Back Friday. We'll talk then. 3 days. 3 days to figure out how I felt, what I wanted, whether I was brave enough to risk everything for something that had started as a lie and somehow become the most real thing in my life. I called Ivy. "I'm in love with him," I said as soon as she picked up. "Oh, honey, I know." "You know?" "Nora, you've been in love with him for months. You just wouldn't admit it. What do I do?" "That depends. Does he feel the same way?" He said he's falling for me. But then he left. He just walked out of the room like he couldn't handle it." Ivy was quiet for a moment. "This is complicated." "I know." "No, I mean really complicated. You have a contract, with penalties, and an end date. And a guy who's spent his whole life being told emotions are weakness, you can't just—" "I know," I said again, but my voice cracked on it. "Oh, Nora, what are you going to do?" "I have no idea." I spent those 3 days in a fog. Working helped. I had an estate sale to organise. But every quiet moment, my mind went back to Julian, to the look on his face when he'd said he was falling for me, to the years of loneliness I'd heard in those words. Diane found me sitting in her garden on the second day, not really doing anything, just existing. "He told you he loves you," she said, not a question. "How did you—" "Because you look terrified. And that's the look people get when they realize they have something worth losing." She sat her turn down beside me. "What are you afraid of?" "That it won't work. That we're too different. That this whole thing is built on a lie. And eventually it'll collapse." "All relationships are built on lies, dear. Little ones, at least. We lie about who we are until we figure out if the other person can handle the truth. What matters is what you do after. What if the truth is too much? Then it wasn't meant to be. But you don't know that yet." I looked at her. This woman who barely knew me, who'd shown me kindness for no reason other than that's who she was. "How do you do it? Stay married for 40 years? You choose each other. Every day. Even on the days when you don't want to. Especially on those days," she patted my hand. "The question isn't whether you love him, Nora. It's whether you're brave enough to admit it." Julian came back on Friday evening. I heard his car in the driveway, heard him come through the door. My heart was racing so hard I felt dizzy. He found me in the living room, standing by the windows that overlooked the city. I'd been there for an hour, rehearsing what I wanted to say, and now that he was here, all my words had evaporated. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi. I'm sorry I left like that. I shouldn't have—" "I'm in love with you," I said, because if I didn't say it right then, I'd lose my nerve. "I'm in love with you, Julian. I have been for a while, and I was too scared to admit it because this was supposed to be temporary and I didn't want to complicate things, but then you said what you said, and I can't pretend anymore." He stared at me, just stared like he couldn't process what I'd said. "Say something," I whispered. "I'm afraid," he said finally. "I'm afraid that I'll hurt you, that I'm too damaged, too closed off, too much like my grandfather. That you'll wake up one day and realize you married someone who can't give you what you deserve. What I deserve is someone who sees me, who cares, who shows up even when it's hard. You do that, Julian. You have been doing that. But the contract— Fuck the contract." That startled a laugh out of him. "Nora!" "I mean it. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the timeline. I care about you, about us, about figuring out if this thing between us is real." "It's real," he said, and his voice was rough with emotion. "God, Nora, it's so real. It terrifies me." He crossed the room in 3 steps and pulled me into his arms, kissed me like he'd been wanting to for months, like I was air, and he'd been drowning. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "The real relationship thing. I don't know if I'm capable of—" "Then we'll figure it out together. We've been doing that anyway, haven't we? Just without admitting what it was." He kissed me again, softer this time. "I love you. I should have said it before. I love you, Nora. I love you too." We stood there in that glass house that had felt so empty 6 months ago, holding each other, and I thought maybe this was what home felt like. Not a place, but a person. I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. I should have remembered that every good thing in my life came with a cost. I should have asked Julian why, exactly, he'd needed a wife so desperately that he'd been willing to pay a stranger to marry him. But I didn't. And that mistake would cost us everything. 2 weeks later, Margot showed up at the house unannounced. I was home alone. Julian was at work when the doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer, but something made me check the video monitor. Margot stood on the doorstep, looking agitated. I opened the door. "Margot, I wasn't expecting—" "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the house. "Is Julian here?" "No, he's at the office. What's going on?" "I need to show you something before he gets a chance to spin it." She pulled out her phone, scrolling frantically. "I wasn't going to say anything, but after what you said at that gala about him being human, I thought you should know the truth." "Know what truth?" She turned the phone toward me. It showed a legal document, dense with text and official seals. I had to read it twice before I understood what I was looking at. It was a clause from Julian's grandfather's will, but not the one Julian had told me about. The clause didn't just require him to be married to inherit his share of the company. It required him to be married to someone of appropriate social standing and background who could be verified to maintain the family's reputation and standards. And there was more. A separate document attached to the will, dated just a few weeks before Julian had proposed to me. A private investigation report. On me. Pages and pages detailing my financial situation, my mother's illness, my business struggles, my debts, my desperation. Every vulnerable thing about my life, catalogued and assessed. And a handwritten note at the end, in Julian's distinctive script. Perfect candidate. Circumstances ensure compliance. Proceed with contract offer. I couldn't breathe. "He didn't choose you randomly," Margot said quietly. "He targeted you because you were broke enough to say yes and desperate enough not to ask too many questions, because you seemed like someone who'd be easy to control." "No," I said, but even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place. How Julian had known exactly how much money to offer. How he'd mentioned my mother's medical debts specifically. How Rebecca Lim had given him my name. Rebecca, who Julian had probably paid to make the introduction seem natural. "I'm sorry," Margot said, and she actually sounded like she meant it. "I know you care about him, but Julian, he learned from our grandfather. Everything's a transaction, everyone's a tool, and you were just the most convenient one." The front door opened. Julian stood there, briefcase in hand, and the look on his face when he saw Margot told me everything I needed to know. It was all true, every word of it. He'd known exactly who I was, exactly how desperate I was, and he'd used it. "Nora," he started. "Get out," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. "Both of you. Get out. Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain." I was shaking. "You investigated me. You chose me because I was vulnerable. Because you thought I'd be easy to manipulate. You used my mother's death, my debt, my desperation, and you turned it into a business strategy. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Julian?" He flinched. "At first, yes. At first it was strategic. But that's not how I feel now." How you feel now? You think that matters? You built our entire relationship on a lie, on exploitation. You targeted me like I was a merger prospect, not a person. I fell in love with you. You fell in love with the version of me you thought you could control. Tears were streaming down my face. And the worst part is, I almost let you. I almost believed this was real. Margot slipped out quietly. Smart woman. Julian stood there, looking more lost than I'd ever seen him. Nora, please, let me. I want a divorce. We're not actually married, not really. The contract. Then I want out of the contract. I don't care about penalties. I don't care about the money. I want nothing to do with you. Nora. I said, get out. He left. I sank to the floor in that beautiful empty house and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. And I realized something that hurt worse than all the rest of it. I still loved him. Even knowing what he'd done, what he'd planned, how he'd used me, I still loved him. And that, more than anything else, felt like the final betrayal. I called Ivy from the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. She answered on the first ring, voice thick with sleep. Nora, what's wrong? I couldn't speak, just sobbed into the phone like a broken thing. I'm coming over, she said. Right now, don't move. She made it from her apartment in Hawthorne to Portland Heights in 20 minutes, which should have been impossible at that hour. She found me still on the bathroom floor, clutching my phone, mascara streaked down my face. Oh, honey, she breathed and pulled me into her arms. I told her everything, the investigation report, the calculated targeting, the handwritten note in Julian's writing that reduced me to a compliance risk assessment. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long time. What do you want to do? She finally asked. I don't know. Leave, stay, scream. I don't know. Do you still love him? That's the problem. I do. I hate that I do, but I can't just turn it off. And that makes me feel pathetic and weak and… Stop. You're not pathetic. You're human. He hurt you, but that doesn't erase what you felt, what you feel. She brushed hair out of my face. The question is whether you can forgive him. I don't know if he deserves forgiveness. Maybe not, but forgiveness isn't always about what someone deserves. Sometimes it's about what you need to move forward. I wanted to argue, but I was too exhausted. Ivy helped me to bed, stayed with me until the sun came up, and was still there when Julian's attorney called at 9. Caroline Voss's voice was professionally sympathetic. Mrs. Hargrave, Mr. Hargrave asked me to reach out regarding the contract dissolution. He's prepared to waive all penalties and provide the full agreed-upon sum, plus an additional settlement for emotional distress. We can have papers drawn up within 48 hours. He's just going to pay me off, I said flatly. He's trying to do right by you. Now, he's trying to do right by me now. Where was that concern when he was investigating my bank statements? Caroline was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, Mrs. Hargrave, I've known Julian Hargrave for 7 years. I've never seen him like this. He's devastated. Good, I said, and hung up. Ivy raised her eyebrows. That was cold. He earned it. Yeah, he did. I stayed in the house for 3 more days, mostly because I had nowhere else to go and refused to let him drive me out. Julian didn't come home. According to texts from Caroline, he was staying at a hotel downtown, giving me space. Space I used to go through everything with new eyes. I found the investigation report in his study, filed neatly in a folder labeled Personal Confidential. Reading it in full was worse than seeing Margot's excerpts. They documented everything. My mother's cancer diagnosis timeline, my business loan default, the exact amount I owed to which creditors. A psychological profile suggesting I was compliant, non-confrontational, and motivated primarily by financial stability and family loyalty. There was a second folder behind it. This one contained other reports, other women he'd investigated. 5 of them, each with similar profiles, Single, in debt, no family entanglements, appropriate backgrounds, each one evaluated and ranked. I'd been number 3 on his list. The first 2 had turned him down. I was the one desperate enough to say yes. I threw up in his pristine wastebasket and left it there for him to find. But there was something else in that folder. Something I almost missed. A handwritten letter, dated 3 months after our wedding, tucked in the back like he'd wanted to hide it from himself. I don't know when it changed, when she stopped being a solution and became someone I couldn't imagine not knowing. She makes tea at midnight and leaves the cups everywhere. She talks to the plants. She laughs at terrible jokes. She asks me if I was okay, and no one ever asks me that. No one ever cares. I'm in love with my wife, my fake wife, my carefully selected, strategically chosen wife. And I have no idea what to do about it because she can never know how this started. She'd hate me. She should hate me. What have I done? The handwriting got shakier towards the end, like he'd been writing in distress. I sat in his study holding that letter and realized the truth was more complicated than I wanted it to be. He'd used me. That was real. But he'd also fallen for me. That was real too. And I had to decide which truth mattered more. Diane showed up on day 4 with a casserole and a stern expression. "You look terrible," she announced, setting the dish on the counter. "Thanks, that's helpful. I'm not here to coddle you. I'm here because you've been hiding in this house like a wounded animal, and that's not going to solve anything." She pulled out a chair. "Sit, eat, talk." I sat. I didn't eat. "Julian investigated me before proposing," I said. "He knew everything about my life, my debts, my mother, everything. He chose me because he thought I'd be easy to manipulate." Diane absorbed this without visible reaction. "And now you found out." "His sister told me, showed me the documents." "Margot." Diane made a complicated face. "That girl's got her own agenda." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've lived in this neighborhood 40 years, and I've watched that family implode in slow motion. Julian's grandfather was a tyrant. Their parents died in a car accident when the kids were young. Julian was 19. Margot was 12. The grandfather raised them, or tried to. Julian learned to survive by becoming exactly what the old man wanted. Margot learned to survive by rebelling against everything. That doesn't excuse what Julian did. No, it doesn't. But it explains it. He's been taught his whole life that emotions are liabilities and people are assets. That love makes you weak, and control keeps you safe. She reached across the table, covered my hand with hers. The question isn't whether he made a terrible choice. He did. The question is whether he's capable of being better than that. How am I supposed to know? You talk to him. You listen. And then you decide if the person he's become is worth forgiving for the person he used to be. Julian called that night. I let it go to voicemail. He called again an hour later. Voicemail. On the 3rd call, I answered. "What?" "Thank you for picking up." His voice sounded wrecked. "Nora, please, let me explain. Let me..." "Explain what? That you targeted me? That you investigated my entire life and decided I was vulnerable enough to exploit? What's there to explain, Julian?" "I know how it looks. It looks like exactly what it is. You used me." "Yes." The admission was quiet. "At first, yes, I did. I was desperate, and you seemed like the perfect solution, and I convinced myself it was just business. But Nora, somewhere along the way, you fell in love with me. I know. I read your letter." Silence. Then, "You were in my study. It's my house too, or it was." I closed my eyes. "Did you mean it? What you wrote?" "Every word." "Then why didn't you tell me the truth? Before Margot did. You had months to come clean." "Because I was a coward. Because I knew if you found out, you'd look at me exactly the way you're looking at me now, like I'm a monster." "Are you?" "I don't know." His voice broke. "Maybe. My grandfather would have been proud of how I handled this. That should tell you everything you need to know." I wanted to hate him. It would have been easier if I could just hate him. I need time, I said. I need to think. Take all the time you need. I'll wait forever if that's what it takes. Julian. I love you, Nora. I know I have no right to say that after what I did, but I need you to know. I love you. Not the profile version of you, not the convenient version. The real you. The one who talks to plants and makes terrible puns and cares about people even when they don't deserve it. I love you, and I'm so sorry. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there in the dark, holding the phone, feeling like my chest was being torn open. Ivy helped me move my things out of the house a week later. Not permanently, I wasn't ready to make that decision yet, but I needed space to think, and I couldn't do it surrounded by Julian's presence. She'd found me a short-term rental in Selwood, a tiny apartment above a coffee shop. It smelled like espresso and old wood, and it was perfect. You going to be okay? She asked, helping me unpack boxes. Eventually, maybe. I don't know. For what it's worth, I think he loves you. I think he's an idiot who made terrible choices, but I think he genuinely loves you. Does that matter? Only you can answer that. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me answer. Is this Nora Dietrich? A man's voice, unfamiliar. Who's asking? My name is Thomas Brennan. I'm a reporter with the Portland Tribune. I'm working on a story about Julian Hargrave and his business practices, and I understand you recently separated from him. I was hoping you might be willing to comment. My blood went cold. How did you get this number? I'm afraid I can't reveal my sources, but I'd really like to speak with you about your marriage, particularly the circumstances surrounding. I hung up. Who is that? Ivy asked. A reporter. Asking about Julian and me. My hands were shaking. How would a reporter even know we separated? We've kept everything quiet. Ivy's expression darkened. Margot. You think she... I think she has every reason to want to hurt Julian, and a spurned wife makes a great story. She was right. Within 2 days, it was everywhere. Hargrave heirs marriage scheme. Did Julian Hargrave buy a wife? Business or betrayal? Inside the calculated marriage of Portland's tech elite. Desperate widow, claims millionaire husband, exploited, her, grief. That last one made me want to throw my phone across the room. I wasn't a desperate widow, my mother had died, but that didn't define me. And I hadn't claimed anything. I'd refused to comment on any of it. But the story had taken on a life of its own. Someone had leaked the investigation report. Not all of it, but enough. Excerpts showing Julian's calculated approach, the psychological profiles, the assessment of my compliance. The media ate it up. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, bloggers, even a producer from a true crime podcast. Ivy had to change my number twice. And through it all, Julian said nothing publicly. His PR team released a bland statement about respecting privacy during a difficult time, but he didn't defend himself, didn't try to spin it. Marcus Roth, however, had plenty to say. He gave an interview to the business section calling Julian's judgment severely compromised and suggesting the board should seriously consider alternative leadership. Other board members piled on. The stock price dropped. I watched it all from my apartment above the coffee shop, feeling sick. Because whatever Julian had done to me, he didn't deserve this. This public shredding, this gleeful destruction. And I was the excuse they were using to tear him apart. Margot called me 2 weeks after the story broke. I need to apologize, she said without preamble. Little late for that. I know, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to blow up like this. I just wanted you to know the truth. I didn't think... Ugh. You didn't think a story about a millionaire buying a wife would go viral. Really, Margot? You're smarter than that. She was quiet. You're right. I knew exactly what would happen. I wanted him to hurt the way he hurt me. What are you talking about? When our parents died, Julian got everything: the business, the money, the legacy. I got conditional trust funds and lectures about responsibility. Our grandfather made it clear I was the spare, not the heir. And Julian, he just went along with it. He could have fought for me, could have shared power, but he didn't. He took what he was given and left me with nothing. So you tried to destroy his life. I tried to make him understand what it feels like to lose everything. Her voice cracked. But I didn't mean to hurt you. I really didn't. You seem like a good person. You didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. No, I didn't. For what it's worth. I think he really does love you. I've never seen him like this. He's falling apart. Good, I said again, but this time I didn't mean it. Julian showed up at my apartment on a Wednesday evening in the September. I saw him through the window, sitting in his car across the street for 20 minutes before he finally got out. He looked terrible, thinner, exhausted, wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down instead of his usual perfect suits. He'd stopped shaving. When he knocked, I almost didn't answer. But I did. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi. Can I come in? Just for a few minutes. I promise I'll leave if you ask me to." I stepped aside. He walked in, looked around the tiny studio apartment, and something in his expression broke. "This is where you're living," he said. It wasn't a question. "It's temporary." "Nora, why are you here, Julian?" He turned to face me. "I'm stepping down from the company." I stared at him. "What?" "The board voted. They want me out. Marcus is taking over as CEO." He said it flatly, like he was discussing the weather. "Turns out exploiting vulnerable women is bad for the company image. Who knew?" "You're not stepping down because of the board. You could fight them." "I could, but I'm tired, Nora. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of pretending I give a damn about the company. My grandfather built it. My grandfather's legacy. I've spent my entire adult life trying to be worthy of it. And for what? So I could end up alone and hated? Julian, I hurt you. The one person who actually cared about me, who saw past all the bullshit, and I hurt you in the worst possible way. And I can't fix it. No matter what I do, I can't undo what I did." He sat down on my couch, really more of a love seat, and put his head in his hands. I should have felt vindicated. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For him to lose something the way I'd lost something. But looking at him, broken and lost, I just felt empty. "Why did you do it?" I asked quietly. "The investigation, the targeting, I need to understand why." He looked up at me. "Because I'm my grandfather's grandson. Because I was raised to see everything as a transaction and everyone as a means to an end. Because I told myself it was just business, and I'm very good at lying to myself." "That's not good enough." "You're right. The truth is, I was terrified. Of losing the company, of failing, of being alone. My parents died when I was 19. Did you know that?" Diane mentioned it. "Car accident, black ice on Highway 26. They were coming back from the coast. I was at college. Margot was 12. His voice was distant. "My grandfather stepped in. Took over everything. He told me emotions were distractions. That grief was weakness. That the only thing that mattered was the company, the legacy, the name. So you became what he wanted. I became what I had to become to survive. And then he died. And suddenly I realized I had no idea who I was without him, without the rules and expectations. So when the will stipulated marriage, I approached it the only way I knew how, like a business problem. And I was the solution. At first, God, Nora, at first you were just checkboxes on a list. But then I met you, and you were real. You were kind and funny, and you talked to me like I was a person, not a position. And I started looking forward to seeing you, started wanting to tell you about my day, started feeling like maybe I could be someone other than what my grandfather made me." Tears were running down his face. I'd never seen him cry. "I fell in love with you, and it terrified me, because love meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant weakness, and I'd spent my whole life believing that weakness would destroy me. So I didn't tell you the truth. I kept the lie going because I was a coward. And I lost you anyway. He stood up. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know the truth. All of it. You deserved that from the beginning, and I'm sorry I didn't give it to you. He walked to the door. Julian, wait. He stopped, hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. I read your letter, I said. The one in your study. The one where you said you didn't know what to do because I'd stopped being a solution. You already told me you read it. I didn't tell you what it meant to me. I took a breath. You made terrible choices. You hurt me. But that letter, it showed me you're not your grandfather. You're someone who's capable of change, of growth, of love. He turned around slowly. Nora. I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm not saying we can go back to how things were. But I'm saying maybe we can figure out what comes next. Together. If you're willing to be honest. Really honest about everything. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Good. Because I have a lot of questions. And they're going to be hard questions, and you're going to have to answer them without your walls up. I can do that. Can you? Because the Julian I married didn't know how to be vulnerable. He didn't know how to let people in. And I need to know if you're capable of being different. He crossed the room, stopped a few feet away from me. I don't know if I'm capable. I've never tried before. But I want to try. For you. For us. I want to be better than what I was raised to be. That's going to take work. Probably therapy. Definitely time. I have nothing but time now. Marcus can have the company. The board can have the legacy. I want something real. I want you. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd hurt me, who'd loved me, who'd been shaped by tragedy and expectation into something sharp and lonely. This man who was standing in my tiny apartment, offering me the most vulnerable version of himself he'd ever shown anyone. I'm still angry, I said, and I'm still hurt, and trusting you again is going to take a long time. I know, but I still love you, and I hate that I do, but I can't change it. His breath caught. You still... Yes, I still love you, which makes me either very forgiving or very stupid, I'm not sure which. Both, probably, he said, and there was the ghost of a smile on his face. Can I hug you? I nodded. He pulled me into his arms and I felt something in my chest finally ease. Not healing completely, that would take time, but starting to. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you, he whispered into my hair. I promise. Good, because you've got a lot to make up for. We stood there in that tiny apartment while the sun set over Portland, holding each other, and I thought maybe this was what redemption looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. The next 6 months were hard. Julian started therapy. Individual sessions twice a week with a psychologist who specialized in family trauma and emotional avoidance. I started therapy too because I needed to process what had happened and why I'd stayed. We did couples counseling. Dr. Patricia Chen, no relation to Ivy or Margaret, just one of those coincidences, was a sharp woman in her 50s who didn't let either of us get away with anything. Nora, why are you minimizing your anger? She'd ask when I tried to gloss over something. Julian, that's deflection. Answer the question, when he tried to hide behind logic. It was brutal. There were sessions where I cried the entire hour. Sessions where Julian had to leave the room because he was so overwhelmed. Sessions where we both wanted to quit. But we didn't quit. Slowly, piece by piece, we started to rebuild. Julian sold his share of the company to Marcus for significantly less than it was worth. He didn't care. He took the money and donated most of it to charities focused on medical debt relief and hospice care, a tribute to my mother, he said. He reached out to Margot. That was harder. She didn't want to talk to him at first, still angry about everything, but he kept trying, kept showing up, kept being honest about his mistakes. Eventually, she agreed to meet him for coffee. I went with him, at his request. Margot looked wary when she saw us together. You're still with him? We're working on it, I said. Why? After everything he did? Because people are more than their worst choices, I said. Because your brother is trying to be better, and because I love him, even though sometimes I wish I didn't. Margot studied me for a long moment. You're either the most forgiving person I've ever met or the biggest idiot. Probably both, I said, echoing what Julian had said to me. That actually made her laugh. A small laugh, but real. I'm sorry, Julian said to his sister, for everything, for not fighting for you when grandfather cut you out, for letting the company become more important than family, for being the kind of person who'd rather follow rules than do what's right. You really stepping down from Hargrave Industries. Already done. Marcus is CEO as of last month. Good. You were always terrible at it anyway. Too much empathy hiding under all that corporate bullshit. She stirred her coffee. What are you going to do now? I don't know. Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else's idea of success. Sounds terrifying. It is. They didn't hug, didn't reconcile completely, but it was a start. I moved back into the house in Portland Heights in November. Not because Julian asked me to, but because Dr. Chen suggested we try cohabiting again under new terms. You need to rebuild your relationship in the space where it fractured, she said, but with clear boundaries and honest communication this time. So we did. We slept in separate rooms at first. I needed time before I was ready for that level of intimacy again. Julian never pushed, never assumed. He asked permission for everything to touch me, to kiss me, to share space. It was awkward sometimes. We'd spent so many months being married, and now we were learning how to actually be together. But there were good moments too. The night he cooked dinner badly, he burned the chicken and oversalted the vegetables. And we ate it anyway, laughing at the disaster. The morning I found him in the garden, trying to figure out how to care for the plants I'd started talking to months ago. I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted, but you love them, so I'm trying to keep them alive. The evening we drove out to the coast, to the same stretch of Highway 26 where his parents had died, and he finally let himself grieve. I held him while he cried, and he didn't try to hide it or apologize for it. Thank you, he said afterward, for not leaving when I gave you every reason to. Thank you for finally showing me who you really are. Christmas came, Julian's first Christmas without the company, without the expectations, without the weight of legacy. We spent it at Diane's house. She'd invited us. No one should be alone on Christmas, especially not two people who are so clearly in love it's painful to watch. And we'd accepted. Her husband, Robert, was exactly as warm and gruff as she was. Their kids and grandkids came by throughout the day. It was chaotic and loud and perfect. This is what family looks like, Julian said quietly, watching Diane's grandchildren tear through wrapping paper. I'd forgotten. Then let's remember, I said. Ivy joined us that evening, along with Rebecca Lim, who I'd reconnected with after the media storm died down. She apologized profusely for giving Julian my name, even though I'd told her it wasn't her fault. He was very convincing, she said. Said he wanted someone trustworthy to handle a sensitive estate matter. I should have known better. We all should have known better about a lot of things, I said. But we're learning. As the evening wound down, Julian pulled me aside. I have something for you, he said. He handed me a small box, not wrapped, just a simple wooden box with a clasp. Inside was a ring. Not an engagement ring, we were still married legally, even if the emotional landscape had changed, but a different ring, simple silver band with an inscription on the inside. Choose each other, every day. Diane's words, Julian said. She told me that's how you stay married for 40 years. You choose each other. Every day, even on the days when you don't want to. He took the ring out, held it carefully. I'm choosing you, Nora. Every day. For the rest of my life. No contract, no timeline, no conditions. Just us. If you'll have me. I'd prepared myself for a lot of things, but not this. Not Julian, vulnerable and earnest, offering me forever without any safety net. You hurt me, I said. You lied to me, used me, broke my trust in ways I didn't know were possible. I know. But you also showed me what it means to really change, to face the worst parts of yourself and choose to be better. And I love you for that. I love you for trying. I held out my hand. He slipped the ring on, and it fit perfectly. I choose you too, I said. Every day. Even the hard ones. We kissed surrounded by the warmth of Diane's house, the sound of laughter and life and family. And it felt like I'm home, but the story went there. Because 2 weeks later, on a rainy January morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Nora Hargrave? A woman's voice, professional, careful. Yes. My name is Elizabeth Moreno. I'm an estate attorney in Seattle. I'm calling about your father. The world stopped. My father's been dead since I was 8. Ma'am, I'm afraid that's not correct. Vincent Dietrich passed away 3 days ago. He named you as a beneficiary in his will. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. That's not possible. He died. Car accident. My mother told me. Your mother may have told you that, but it's not accurate. Mr. Dietrich has been living in Seattle for the past 23 years. He left specific instructions that you be contacted upon his death. The room was spinning. Julian, who'd been making coffee, was suddenly beside me, steadying me. Are you sure? I managed to ask. Quite sure, ma'am. I have documentation. I can email it to you, or we can schedule a meeting to discuss the estate. It's substantial. I gave her my email in a daze and hung up. Nora, Julian's voice was worried. What's wrong? My father's alive. Was alive. Died 3 days ago. I don't understand. He pulled me into his arms while I tried to process it. My father. The father I'd grieved at 8 years old. The father whose absence had shaped my entire childhood. He'd been alive the whole time. The email from Elizabeth Moreno arrived an hour later. Documentation. A death certificate for Vincent Dietrich, dated January 14th. A will. Bank statements showing an estate worth nearly $2 million. And a letter. My dear Nora. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And you finally know the truth your mother worked so hard to hide. I didn't die when you were 8. I left. Your mother and I divorced, and she was granted full custody under conditions that included no contact with you. I fought it in court. I lost. She told you I was dead because she thought it would be easier than explaining why I couldn't see you. Maybe she was right. I don't know. I've followed your life from a distance. I know about your mother's illness. I know about your business. I know you married Julian Hargrave, and I know the marriage became complicated. I've wanted to reach out 1,000 times, but I respected your mother's wishes. Even after she died, I thought maybe it was too late. Maybe you were better off not knowing. But I can't leave this world without you understanding that I loved you, that I never stopped loving you, that every day without you was a loss I carried. I'm leaving you everything I have. It's not enough to make up for the years we lost, but I hope it helps. I hope you build a good life. I hope you find happiness. I'm so proud of the woman you became. Love, Dad. I read it 3 times, and then I fell apart. Julian held me while I cried, for the father I'd lost twice, for the years we could have had, for my mother, who'd made an impossible choice and carried that secret to her grave. Or, I'm so sorry, Julian kept saying. I'm so sorry. But this wasn't his fault. This wasn't anyone's fault, really. Just life being cruel in the random, senseless way it sometimes is. I went to Seattle a week later to meet with Elizabeth Moreno and settle the estate. Julian came with me. We drove instead of flew. I needed time to think. My father's house was small, tidy, in a neighborhood near Green Lake. Inside, it was filled with pieces of my life. Photos he must have gotten somehow, articles about my business, a framed newspaper clipping from when I'd organized a charity estate sale for the children's hospital. He'd been watching. All those years, he'd been watching. Why didn't he fight harder? I asked Elizabeth. If he loved me, why didn't he keep fighting? Your mother was very convincing in court, Elizabeth said gently. She provided evidence of instability on your father's part, some substance abuse issues in his early 20s, some financial problems. None of it was current, but it was enough. And your mother's attorney argued that disrupting your life with a contentious custody battle would cause psychological harm. So he gave up. He stepped back. There's a difference. He paid child support faithfully, even though your mother never acknowledged it. He built a life, got sober, became stable. But by then, you were grown, and your mother was sick. And he thought, she trailed off, he thought you'd hate him for not fighting hard enough. I probably would have. If he'd reached out while my mother was dying, while I was drowning in debt and grief, I would have hated him. But now I just felt empty. We stayed in Seattle for 3 days while I sorted through everything. Julian helped me pack up the house, decide what to keep, what to donate, what to sell. In a closet I found more letters, dozens of them. Letters my father had written to me over the years and never sent. Dear Nora, you're 12 today. I wonder if you still love strawberries. Dear Nora, your mother died. I read the obituary. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Dear Nora, you got married. I saw the announcement. I hope he treats you well. I hope he knows how lucky he is. I read them all in one sitting, tears streaming down my face, and Julian sat beside me the whole time, not saying anything, just being there. I understand now, I said when I finished, why you were so afraid to tell me the truth, why you thought the lie was better. Nora, my mother lied to me my entire life. She told me my father was dead because she thought it was easier than the truth. And maybe she was right. Maybe knowing he was out there, unable to see me, would have hurt worse. But I still deserved to know. You did. Just like I deserved to know the truth about us, about how we started. I turned to look at him. Lies don't protect people, Julian. They just delay the pain. I know that now. Do you, really? Yes, I swear to you, Nora, no more lies, no more secrets. Even if the truth hurts, you deserve to know it. I believed him. Maybe I was naive, but I believed him. We drove back to Portland with my father's ashes in a small urn and $2 million I'd never asked for and didn't know what to do with. You could use it for your business, Julian suggested. Expand. Hire people. Build something real. I could, or I could donate it. Or I could set up a scholarship fund for people dealing with medical debt. Or, I stopped. I don't know. It feels like blood money. It's not. It's your father's way of saying he loved you. But I never got to know him. Never got to hear him say it. I know. He reached over, took my hand. But you got to know he wanted to. That has to count for something. Maybe it did. Spring came. The roses in Diane's garden bloomed. I reopened my business, this time with proper funding and a small team. Julian spent his days volunteering at a youth centre in North Portland, mentoring kids from complicated family situations. He was good at it, surprisingly. Maybe because he understood what it meant to be shaped by things beyond your control. Margot came to visit in April. She stayed for a week, and she and Julian actually talked. Really talked about their parents, their grandfather, the years of resentment and hurt. I don't forgive you, she told him on her last day. Not completely, but I'm willing to try. That's all I can ask, he said. She looked at me. Take care of him. He's an idiot. But he's my idiot brother. I will. After she left, Julian turned to me. Thank you. For what? for giving me a reason to be better, for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to, for teaching me what love actually means. You did the same for me, I said. You showed me that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define you, that sometimes the messy, complicated truth is better than the beautiful lie. We stood in our glass house on the hill, surrounded by plants I'd learned to keep alive and memories we'd built together, and I realized something. This was never going to be a perfect love story. It was always going to be complicated, marked by mistakes and pain and hard choices. But it was ours, real and flawed, and worth fighting for. I love you, Julian said. I love you too. And for the first time since that Tuesday in March when we'd signed papers in front of a notary, I meant it without reservation. 1 year later, we got married again. Really married this time. Not a contract signing, but a wedding. Small ceremony in Diane's garden because she'd refused to let us go anywhere else. Ivy was my maid of honor. Margot stood up for Julian, which surprised everyone, including him. I wore a dress I actually chose myself. Julian wore a suit that wasn't perfect, and I loved him for it. Diane and Robert officiated together because somehow that seemed right. Marriage, Diane said, is choosing each other every single day, through the fights and the forgiveness, through the mistakes and the making up, through all of it. It's choosing to believe, Robert added, that the person in front of you is capable of being better than they were yesterday, and then helping them become that person. We exchanged rings, not the one from the contract, not even the one Julian had given me at Christmas. New rings, inscribed the new promise. Truth, always. When the officiant said, "You may kiss," Julian pulled me close and whispered, "Thank you for giving me a second chance." "Thank you for earning it," I whispered back. And then he kissed me, and everyone cheered, and it felt like a beginning. It's been 3 years since that Wednesday morning when a millionaire walked into my office and offered me a business arrangement. 3 years since I signed papers agreeing to be a temporary wife. 3 years of lies and truths, hurt and healing, breaking and rebuilding. Julian and I aren't perfect. We still fight. We still mess up. I still have days where I remember the investigation report and feel that initial betrayal. He still has days where he retreats into old patterns of emotional distance. But we choose each other, every day, even the hard days. He's not the man he was when we met. I'm not the woman I was either. We've both been changed by what we've been through, made more honest, more vulnerable, more real. My business is thriving. Julian's youth centre is expanding. We bought a smaller house, something warmer and more lived in than the glass palace in Portland Heights. Margot visits every few months. Diane and Robert are basically our second parents. And sometimes, late at night when we're lying in bed, Julian will turn to me and say, "I still can't believe you stayed." And I'll say, "I can't believe you gave me a reason to." The truth is, I married a millionaire for business. But I fell in love with the man he became when he finally stopped trying to be what everyone else wanted and started being himself. And that made all the difference.